Welcome to the Cervena Barva Press reading series. And we have three wonderful writers this afternoon. And so let's get started. Our first reader is Jeff Friedman. Jeff Friedman's 10th book of poetry and prose, Ashes in Paradise, was recently published by BatCat Press. Friedman's work has appeared in American Poetry Review, Poetry, Poetry International, Dreaming Awake, New Contemporary Prose Poetry from the United States, Australia, and the United Kingdom, New England Review, Best Microfiction 2021, 22, and 23, and the New Republic. He has received an NEA Literature Translation Fellowship and numerous other awards. And I give you, Jeff.
Thank you, Gloria. Thanks for the introduction and for inviting me to read. And it's really nice to be here with everybody, and also to read with Kathleen and Meg, two writers I greatly admire. I want to make one little correction. The book isn't quite out yet. It's at the printers. It seems like it's almost like the check is in the mail. It's been at the printers for the publisher keeps saying it's at the printers. So I'm kind of wondering if it hasn't, been permanently stalled there. So, but okay, I'm going to read, I'll read a selection of pieces, some from my new book. I'll start out with an older piece because I think it's from Floating Tales. So since we're kind of in difficult times, I thought I'd read a poem about difficult times, or a piece about difficult times, prose piece. Difficult times. The boss came in with his usual alacrity. "Sorry we have to let you go," he said. He held the door frame and hung his head as if stunned by his own revelation. When I got up to offer him my chair, he crumbled into it and began sobbing, the tears running down his red cheeks. I handed him my handkerchief, which he used to sop up the tears. Then he blew his nose, and the chair shot back into the wall. "It's so hard, my job," he cried. "These are difficult times," I answered, patted his shoulder for support. He bent over as if he were going to be sick. I pushed the wastebasket under his face because if he made a mess, I was worried I'd be responsible for cleaning up. He coughed a few times and spit into it. "I've been here 10 years. Do you have to let me go?" I asked. Suddenly he fell on the floor, doubled up, a fierce pain in his gut. I called the infirmary, but the operator broke in to say that the infirmary had been shut down. My boss rolled back and forth as if in a seizure. He moaned so loudly he couldn't hear me repeat my question. So loudly, the floors and windows vibrated. When I pinned his shoulders, he went limp and his eyes rolled back. I couldn't hear his breathing. Firing me had killed my boss. How would I explain that to human resources? Then, miraculously, he came to, smiling and cheerful. "You'll be missed," he said, and jumped to his feet, extending his open hand. Now that's based on something that happened, or it might have happened. Or in some way, it might have been true. I don't know. Okay, the next one I'm going to read is a new piece. And I've been thinking about, it's sort of a dialogue about the idea of homeland or the idea of nation, since everybody's in wars all the time about their homeland and their nation. So I kind of wrote a piece about it. It's kind of a lighter comic piece. And just a preface to that, my father's family came from Hungary and Romania. So this begins with that as part of the homeland. "You shouldn't visit Hungary," my brother said. "It's our homeland." "How could it be my homeland?" I asked. "I've never been there." "Everyone there has Dad's brown eyes and his rock of a chin," he said. "Everyone looks like him and like us." I peered into my brother's face and saw my father's face, and then my own. I remember how my father combed wildroot into his black curly hair, huffing so forcefully he fogged up the bathroom mirror, how he whipped the comb away, flinging oily drops on the tile floor, how at dinner he inhaled the hot breath of Hungarian stew as though it were the air rising from the earth of his homeland. A country of our people, I thought. Everyone looking like everyone else. Everyone looking like us. Every face, a mirror of every face. Scary, I said. I'm not going. Um, this one called My Sister's Gift um, is based on a sister, I think, maybe a fictional sister. It's based on some sister, but not one that belongs to me. But it's based on a sister anyway. Sister, My Sister's Gift. We're in the living room when my sister coughs up another fish. Get that fish, my mother orders, and throw it in the icebox. The fish flips and flops and slips out of my grasp, but eventually I trap it with a small metal wastebasket. I dump the fish in the freezer with the other fish my sister has coughed up. In the living room, my mother is reading the same book she is always reading, and my sister lies on the couch, perhaps fatigued from letting out another fish. What's the matter with her? I ask. Nothing, my mother answers. She just occasionally coughs up a fish. My sister pops up with a pillow in her hand. Mother says I'm gifted. She giggles, proud of herself. Don't you think we should do something about this? I ask my mother. She inserts her bookmark and places the book on the stand and then removes her black cat eye glasses. Why, she says, the fish are pretty good, dinner sized and tasty. Your sister is saving us money on our grocery bill with her gift. What if she coughs up a fish at school? I asked. Everyone will ridicule her mercilessly. My sister punches me on the arm softly. No, they won't, she says. You should see some of the things they cough up. My mother tells me to mind my own business and that it wouldn't hurt me to contribute something to the family budget. Then I feel a tickling in my throat and a cough trying to leap out. So I keep my mouth shut for the rest of the morning. A story about fish and sisters. Um, so I think to some extent, like, I've kind of, my piece, my eye has become much less autobiographical over the years. So everything that kind of goes on is more fictional. Although I've been coming back to more to a tighter relationship with the autobiographical. And I'll give you an example. This next piece is called My Mother's Dress Shop, and my mother had a dress shop in Midtown St. Louis. She said that she sold sexy clothing. And her dress shop was robbed on a regular basis. It was robbed so many times she couldn't collect insurance. But I used to help out there sometimes. Like I'd be invited to come down and unload the trucks, take the boxes of clothing out, and then to break down the boxes in the alley and stuff them in the dumpster. So that was kind of my job on and off. So my mother's dress shop. Break down the boxes that held the clothing and stuff them into the dumpster in the alley behind the shop. Break down the racks that held the sexy dresses, the leather coats, the French lingerie, until they are just rods and wheels lying in a corner. Fold up the clothing neatly. Break down the counter, the shelves, and the cash register, empty of cash. Break down the shadows that no longer hold voices. Break down the light that dropped through the window like a message until it is just a scrap of light. Break down the dust that clings to the walls and counter your mother attacks with a cloth and Windex. Break down the mannequins until they are disconnected limbs, head, and torso. Now there is only the memory of a memory, the striped cat leaping on the counter, its tail ticking back and forth, the nurses in white uniforms peeking in the windows of air to spot a skirt or blouse on sale, your mother's voice coming back to you like the smells of a fresh cinnamon sweet roll and steaming black coffee, and the blaze of sun that makes it impossible to see. So actually, I'm proud that that actually appeared in Best Microfiction 2023, I think. So and that's a beginning. I'm reading a couple pieces about memory here, kind of memory and forgetting, remembering and forgetting. I've lately taken that, as I've begun to forget more, I've lately taken that subject up a little bit in some of my pieces. This next one is called Chopsticks. How he loved remembering that she had been in love with him, kissing him suddenly while they sat at the piano, playing chopsticks together. She didn't remember that, kissing him or being in love. I would have never played chopsticks or any song with you. I never learned to play the piano, she said. He took her hands in his and looked into her eyes. We were lovers, he said. I just met you, she answered. He led her to the piano and helped her sit down. We've been married a long time, he said, taking the spot next to her. She closed her eyes, thinking about what he had just told her. But when she thought about lying down in the bedroom, she couldn't picture him beside her. When she thought about the living room, he was not in it. Nor was he with her when she walked the neighborhood, stopping to admire the purple flowers and the burning bushes. Nor could she place him in the garden. Nor could she feel his lips kissing her tenderly on the cheek. As he began to play chopsticks, her hands moved up and down too, but didn't touch the keys. And this one is called, this one also was in Best My Collection. It's called Giver of Gifts, and kind of dedicated to the kind of brilliant but crazy old Jewish poets and rabbis I've known and been influenced by. Many of whom I love dearly, but also I recognize that they could be very destructive in their own manner. Giver of Gifts. Before the old man went under, he sang one of his miserable songs, for which he is famous. He praised onions for their character, ducks for their communal spirit, and carpenter ants for their strong jaws and endurance. So what if they don't win any races? He kissed each of us on the cheek for the last time, he said, his breath stinking of horseradish and garlic. Be kind, he said, which he never was. He praised chicken fat, the four bellies of the cow, the croaking frogs that scared the shit out of Pharaoh, with whom he split lox and bagel at the Carnegie Deli on Wednesdays. He cursed the evil, demented president and all his sycophants. He cursed the Confederate senator blocking every bill, his waddle trembling, the attorney general bloating like a stuffed turkey. He begged us to follow the righteous path and give up vanity. He asked that we light candles for him, repeat his words, tell stories of his life. He asked that his memories become seeds we plant in the wind. He called himself the last Babylonian king, spreading literacy to the masses. He called himself a giver of gifts, though he never donated to any causes or even dropped a nickel in a beggar's cup. He praised himself for his journey in the desert, his days running with the hyenas, his devotion to a small bird that died in his hand. Then he closed his eyes and went under. At last, there was no pulse or breath, no preaching, only peace. But in the morning, he began to sing another of his miserable songs, and before he went under again, we had to repeat the whole damn ceremony. my tenor voice. Caruso. Also, I want to mention that that was written during the Trump administration. I'm not, I didn't want to pin that on Biden. It's actually on Trump. So, and Bill Barr, you might recognize, and also the ever famous, popular, well-dressed, well-spoken Mitch McConnell. Okay. The next piece, I've also done a series or number of pieces over the years. I know a number of people have on monsters and imaginary creatures. So I thought I'd read one of them today because I have like 3 or 4 in the book. And so this one's called Catching the Monster. On Main Street, I spot the monster in the crowd. He's clean shaven, but there are red nicks on his cheeks and chin. He's got long claws that can rip a chest apart in seconds. No one in the crowd appears to notice that the monster is among them. I follow closely, weaving in and out until I'm almost stepping on his heels. Suddenly, he turns to face me. You're a monster, I say. He licks the stain of blood from his lips. Is that so bad, he asks. There are many missing, I answer, and bones scattered throughout the city. Without even a glance, people walk by or around us. Neon signs blink. Cars jam the noisy streets, growing jumpy. Music blasting from open windows. There are always many missing, always trails of clues leading everywhere and nowhere, he says. I grip his forearm, causing him to grimace. I'm taking you in. The monster breathes in my face. His breath is sweet as if he has eaten a sweet meat. He stares deep into my eyes, searching for my secrets. If you believe in monsters, perhaps you are a monster, he says. Isn't that what all monsters say? I ask. Point well taken, he answers. But you do have a powerful jaw, yellow eyes, and spotted skin, like the rest of us monsters. I cuff his wrist to mine, head to the station to turn us both in for the reward. And let's see. What time is it? 5:30 yet? No, I'm just kidding. It is, I'm gonna read one more piece. And also, in addition to that kind of series, I've also been writing a number of pieces in response to kind of the kind of fascist Trumpian and distortion of truth that's been going on. And this is one of the many that I've been doing. This one appears in Ashes in Paradise also. Okay, the last truth. One truth was shot while it sat in a cafe, sipping an Americano and writing its memoir. Another truth rose up on a stage and protested the swarm of lies that had descended on the town, clinging to heads and faces or flying down throats. The mob rushed the stage, pummeling this truth until it fell beneath them. They kicked and stomped it to death. Another truth was tortured until it confessed it was a lie, and then the spirit left its body, and only emptiness resided inside it. Many truths were burned in the public square as they screamed, "I'm telling the truth." We collected their ashes and bone in an urn and tried to bring them back to life with spells and chants, but our words had lost their belief in the power to summon. And the last truth, hiding for months in abandoned buildings, escaped into the forest. When it returned years later, no one recognized it or believed what it was saying. Thank you very much for attending. I appreciate it. A small but mighty crowd.
Thank
Most
you
of the
so
audience.
much, Jeff.
Thanks, Gloria.
Kathleen McGookey is our next reader. Her most recent books are Instructions for My Imposter, Press 53, and 19 Letters, BatCat Press. Her chapbook, Cloud Reports, is forthcoming in 2024. Her work has recently appeared in Copper Nickel, Epoch, Glassworks, Hunger Mountain, Los Angeles Review, North American Review, and Southern Review. She lives in Middleville, Michigan with her family, and I give you Kathleen.
Thank you, Gloria. It is delightful to be here with all of you and with Meg and Jeff. Meg and Jeff have been such big influences on me as a writer, and I thought I would start out with a piece that has been one piece that each of them has influenced. Jeff has a poem, you didn't read it, about memory, where a sister steals a memory from a brother. And that's actually in Best Microfiction 2021. Oh, it's blurry. And Jeff gave the prompt to write a piece where one character steals something from another and maybe something that doesn't seem like it could be stolen. And that really kind of lodged in my imagination. I went through a period of time where I didn't get a lot of sleep because I had young children. And then after my children were older, I still wasn't sleeping well for some reason. So I was just really craving sleep. And so that's what I wrote my piece about, called The Sleep Thief. For years, when her children were small, she stole a little sleep from them each night. Just a few minutes worth. What was the harm? She labeled the glass vials by name and date and time and locked them in a fireproof safe. The sleep was colorless, though the longer she stored it, the more the vials glowed, an icy, rosy glow, like winter mornings when dawn rose up from the frozen ground. She wanted run-of-the-mill, average sleep, so she skipped the nights when they had fevers, birthdays, and Christmas, and nights they spotted shooting stars. If, at breakfast, a child reported falling off a cliff or being chased by lions, she poured that night's sleep down the drain. She couldn't risk nightmares infecting her collection. She had always intended one day to return the sleep to its rightful owners. But so many nights now, instead of lingering in the doorway to watch her children sleep, she found herself in the basement, gazing at the rows of softly glowing vials, unable to tear herself away. Thank you. You might know that Meg has a newsletter where she sends out these wonderful prompts, and she always includes a picture of something that's so unusual. I always wonder where she finds them and how can she keep finding them. And one week the prompt showed a woman walking a duck on a leash. And the crazy coincidence was, before I saw that picture, I had just written a piece about a woman walking a duck on a leash. And so in my mind, this piece is always going to be connected to Meg. And the reason I wrote it, where it started, was my daughter has a job at the state park around the corner from us, just a summer job. And every day I'd ask her, what did you do? What was something interesting that you saw? And some days, she chopped wood or searched for lost campers or learned the way to rescue a raccoon from a trash can. But one day she came home and said she saw a woman walking a duck on a leash. And so that image just lodged in my imagination. Undercover duck. A woman walked her duck on a leash from her van to the beach. Moments earlier, she'd clipped the leash to a red vest zipped over the duck's chest. It waddled politely, foot over foot. It regarded the horizon, the blown apart clouds, the waves of algae washed up on shore. Then it sat, feet tucked under feathers, a neat package on the sand. If a duck could look melancholy, that duck did. The woman stared back at me and touched her ear, where a brown feather dangled, edged in the green of a dollar bill. The duck began murmuring, the sound rising and swelling, a reverie, a plea. I don't want him getting any big ideas, the woman said. The duck remained motionless, except for its throat. His iridescent head caught the light and held it. The woman nodded, like she understood what I wanted to ask, and said, "That's how all this started." So my kids are actually adults now, but when they were younger in elementary school, I spent a lot of time volunteering in their classrooms. And one day around Halloween, I saw one of the teachers' bulletin boards. And what she had done, she was trying to encourage the children to use larger vocabulary words. And these were, I think they were 4th or 5th graders. And so what she did was she created a cemetery. I mentioned it was around Halloween, right? So she created a cemetery, and there was a headstone for small words individually. So there was a headstone for the word little. There was a headstone for the word pretty. There was a headstone for the word big. And then there was a space where they wrote what word they were going to replace it with. So they were going to use long, multi-syllable, complicated words. So instead of big, they were supposed to use gargantuan, something like that. And to my mind, none of the big words sounded as good as the little words, which were perfectly serviceable and, very good. So that experience stayed with me. Small words. On Cherry Valley Road, there's a catalpa with a heart-shaped hole in its side where the trunk branched and half tore away in the storm. You could stand on tiptoe and hide a measuring cup and a spinning wheel in there. I pass it twice a day, taking my kids to school, but today I can't stop and guess 100 names for love. Not even one. A mass of white petals litters the ground. Some days I glance at the jagged hole and wonder if it's growing teeth. Some days, while the kids argue, I think about dinner, about the bats living in the eave and the ladder. The lost language arts book, surely damaged in the storm. My daughter's teacher wants her students to stop using perfectly good small words like little and pretty in favor of more complicated ones. She's made the classroom bulletin board into a graveyard, miniature headstones marking each discarded word. I see her point and disagree. After dinner, the dog and I walk in the dark while the wind shakes a little more rain from the trees. It's very nice seeing the clapping hands, I have to say. Thank you. I didn't mean for you to do it again, but it's very nice. So for the past year, it's felt like I've spent a lot of time at my desk looking out at the clouds and trying to calm myself down, not only current events, but also being the parent of adult children, watching them out in the world and making decisions and not being able to really influence that was terrifying in a way that I didn't realize was happening. So I spent a lot of time looking at the clouds. I would usually write after that and I would feel better, but it wasn't anything except the act of creating and getting out of my head for a little bit. So now I have this chapbook called Cloud Reports, and it's really a mix of what I'm seeing outside and kind of the interior that's emerging into the landscape. And here's one of them. Cloud Report 1/18/23. Now the angels are in my kitchen, whipping cream in big silver bowls. I am tired of being afraid. When they look at the sky, an airplane slowly disappears into sweet white chiffon, bare wet trees stark against it. I didn't invite them, but like clouds, a few arrived anyway. They gaze over my shoulder toward the horizon when I ask, what happens now? They offer me a soft chair with the best view and a cup of hot chocolate, but the clouds form a wall as far as I can see. So the angels curl on the couch, then tuck their robes around their knees. Clearly, they have time. And I will finish with one more. I'm working on putting together another full-length manuscript of poems, and I'm kind of amazed every time I do that. It still feels really hard, and I still feel really lost. I've done it before, but it never is the same. And I always have the same questions about, how the poems should talk to each other, what the experience should be like for the reader. So I'm in the midst of that, and I had a dream about it. And I woke up and I usually it doesn't work to just write your dream down, but this is one of the rare times where I think it worked for me. And this is called In My Hometown Library. I sat with a poet I loved like a father, reading poems. They were my poems, and I wanted to know what to do. Let me say, this kind of dream has never come to me before. I passed manuscript pages to the poet I loved like a father, and he passed them back to me. Mostly, he said, yes. The rest of the dream was the motion of deer crossing a dirt road at twilight, clouds rushing ahead of a storm. We sat in cushy armchairs by a gas fireplace, and golden light flickered across his glasses. The librarian with red hair came by and asked us to join the famous poet whose reading was just now starting. Why not? My friend said, and held out his hand to help me onto the stage. Thank you so much. It has been delightful.
Thank you, Kathleen. And I just love the idea of a cemetery for small words. I don't think I'll ever forget that. I really like it. So our next reader is Meg POKRASS. She is the author of 9 collections of flash fiction and 2 novellas in flash. Her work has been published in Flash Fiction America, Best Small Fictions, 2018, 19, 22, and 23, Wigleaf Top 50, and hundreds of literary journals, including Electric Literature, McSweeney's, Washington Square Review, 5 Points and Passages North. Her new collection, The First Law of Wholes, New and Selected Stories, is forthcoming from Dzanc Books in 2024. And I give you Meg.
Thank you so much, Gloria. It was wonderful to hear Kathleen and Jeff read, and I love your introductions to the pieces. Kathleen, it was really wonderful to hear all those. I unfortunately don't do that. I just launch into my stuff. So apologies in advance. I just don't have it in me to do intros. I don't know what's wrong with me, but okay. So all these are most of these pieces are going to be stories that were recently published in literary journals. And the first one is called Flight, and it was just published recently in a wonderful little microfiction journal called Switch. Switch Online, I think is the actual name of the magazine. Flight. My sister flew, which is why my father hated her and not me. This is all I can think about when the floating feeling wakes me up at night. How not even my mother believed in her wings. How, when we were young, she flew down our long staircase wearing a witch hat to tell me something I needed to know about my father, but she only got halfway down. When she fell to the bottom of our stairs, there was nothing left to say. She laughed, "I'm a silly witch," held her skinny arms out, so I walked inside them and we floated until we felt safe. This has something to do with why I sit here staring at life from a distance, sipping liquor near the dog. An angel doesn't tell us what to believe. She sits guard near that childhood staircase, almost here, almost there. And the next one is called Azure Life. That was also published in Switch. Azure Life. The azure sky was blazing when we got hitched. You, my blue-eyed boy, and me, your azure-tongued woman, liquid with love and mischief, our middle name. You wanted me because I had so many ideas about how to hang with the butterscotch people. We made love in the park before any of them woke up. Bunkum, you said, you are full of trouble. You are a crazy con artist, you said, kissing me on my plush mouth. This was all I needed to hear, of course, and what I already knew, and how I grinned from ear to ear, money blossoming in my kisses, money tumbling from your unsinkable smile. Those days, your body was my boat. how it sailed us around and around until we nearly sank. This was not only about being young, it was about how the money rolled easily back then, like the waves of the bay, our fat dog slipping into the water between us in the cold morning fog, the three of us mimicking a family. And the next piece is a little bit longer. It's called The Producer, and it was published in the Northwest Review. The 90-year-old producer had a hole in his heart, a shaky, unpatchable hole. He wanted me to fill it with kisses, candy, and jokes. I handed him a travel-sized Mars bar that I got off the plane. Only a monkey, he said, would offer this old sack of bones a gift from the red planet. He said this because of my newly red hair. He liked to run his skinny fingers through it. I called him the producer because he had always wanted to produce a movie. Sometimes he asked me to write one, told me to create a character role just for him and to make him younger, less shaky, without Parkinson's, less married. That was easy, as I imagined him a younger person. The nickname Monkey rubbed off on me. There was a gullible monkey on my shoulder, enjoying the stories he told me about his terrible home life, how his wife carried a loaded pistol around the house, even in her PJs. She never puts it away anymore, he winked. What a horrible person she was, I told myself, kissing his shivery lips. That blouse is very flattering on you, the producer said, his face half fallen. It was the same blouse I had worn every other night in the dining room. I wondered if he had had a mini stroke in his sleep. Half of his face looked younger than the other half, less perceptive. He gazed at me as if I alone provided gravity. The hotels we stayed in had very good food. We would eat in the dining rooms, and middle-aged businessmen would stare with disgusted expressions as the two of us nibbled appetizers and sipped rhubarb gin. They thought he had to be a great uncle or a grandfather, so why was I wearing such a low-cut, decadent blouse? Why were his eyes gripping the rise of my cleavage as if he was pulling himself from some brackish lake? He's a producer, and I'm in love with him, I wanted to say. Give me a break. I didn't have a dad, I wanted to scream. They would offer me a weak nod, as if to say, if he croaks tonight, I'm around. My story is filled with love tragedies, and I told the producer all about them. You should write a screenplay about your life, he said, and this cheered me up. My strong young boyfriends would eventually say that they saw our relationship as a weakness. I never knew what they meant. Their muscular legs would take off for runs or bike rides in the early morning. They were running away from me, my mother once said, because often they didn't return. For example, my young husband disappeared after going for a long, mindful ultra run. I like the look of that path, he said, and I never saw him again. I knew there were mountain lions around, but they never found his bones. Thankfully, I heard from him a few years later. He wrote me a postcard from Jakarta to say that his knees, hips, and spine had finally given out. That's what unhappiness does to you, he wrote. By the time I turned 27, I was tired of the young ones, their perfect bodies and their deeply unsatisfied souls. When I first met the producer, I arrived at a hotel with my dog. I was still married, but my husband had been missing for a year. When the producer hugged me in the lobby of the hotel, I tried not to cry. You are tattered and shabby, he said, or maybe I imagined it. His skin was yellowed and fragile to the touch. I like your face, I said. I like your dog, he said. We took the elevator up to his hotel room, and he put on a Lucinda Williams song. He had an iPad that he didn't know how to use. He said the one thing he was confident about was the music app. Somehow I can always make it sing, he said. The song that plays in my head when I remember the producer is something about what happens when we talk. I felt it was corny the first time he played it for me, but now that he is gone, I miss the talks we had, how much he liked my dog, and how it felt as if he was calling to me from someplace close but very far away. The last time I saw him, he perched on the sofa of our hotel room as if he was ready to fly. We are not the same age, he said. This seemed like an obvious fact and one that might have been noted already. I'm not worried about it, I said. Are you? I took his hand and it was cold. I wanted to say, please don't fret about nonsense. I yanked him off the sofa and right into my arms. We danced to Lucinda Williams. I felt sad that he had said it, and I was shivering a bit. He held me tight as a 20-year-old, but felt light as a paper doll. So weightless, I could have carried him home in my arms. I've got a couple little ones next. The next one's called Hooked, and it appeared in Craft magazine. Hooked. And that was a time Papa hooked me on the way to school. I was running and late, and he said, "Let's go the other way, Guppy," because the day was too cheerful for school, and Papa was holding my hand, saying his new life adventure was ready to begin, and I had a part in it. He sure had a lot to tell me. When I noticed the stains on his shoes and the blotches on his shirt, and said to him, "Are you doing okay?" And he said, "Your mama is not very kind, not like you." And he held my hand tight as a rose, and I could feel the petals on his fingers bending to mine. And I said that this was fine and dandy by me. I hated school anyway. And he said, "Guppy, I have purchased a big old fish, and the poor fish needs to be eaten today, or it will rot from neglect." And I said, "Yay, he knows I like fish, and Mama does not." "What does it taste like?" I asked. "Is it white or is it pink?" "It's good and firm," he said, "just the way a fish tastes when you catch it before it's full grown." So I laughed, and I let him lead me home to his sad old fish, to his house with his paintings of girls like me all over his walls. And I stood there, feeling jiggly, almost glad to be back with him. I was his daughter again. Whatever she said to me didn't matter. And that was how it happened. That was how I became a fish who never knows what ocean it wants to swim in. And the next one is called Sibling Circus. It was also published in Craft magazine. Sorry. My brother was addicted to dog biscuits, and this might have been how our act started. When our mother arrived, he'd pop one in his mouth, throw one to the real dog, and then toss one to me. I'd catch it in my teeth. "Good dogs we are," he'd say, watching me chew and then patting me on the head, telling the other dog to sit pretty. The imaginary sign between us saying, "Today only, live and in person." Him wearing my bozo slippers, the real dog sniffing our mother's jeans as if finding an old buried rabbit. The spectacle of all of us being together again in that living room. Our father sometimes laughing, our visiting mother opening her milky eyes and saying, "Bravo, bravo." Shorebirds crying while circling our house as if hoping for comps. Our mother saying, "The light in this place is distressing." My brother singing Nellie the Elephant, crooning directly to our mother with her tightrope smile. Papa juggling three old tennis balls. Our mother suddenly undoing the magic by glaring at him, saying, "You're not letting that dog eat biscuits again." Papa dropping the ball, saying, "We need to drive your mother back now. Can you kids give me a hand?" Our mother with no resistance, rising like a dove from a hat, saying, "What will these terrible con artists think of next?" Oh, that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gloria. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you so much, Meg. All of you. Oh, it was so wonderful. I appreciate you reading today so much. And for those of you that came to listen, thank you. And can we give the readers one more round of applause?
It was great. Beautiful.